Today's song only needed its opening note, one note, to spark a revolution on rock radio. This song is sinister. It is mind-altering. It's empowering. One growling intro note is all it took to open the portal to an otherworldly soundscape, masterfully crafted, I might add, by one of the most colossal forces in rock history. This rock band, it broke the world in two with this 1981 gateway anthem that turned all of us into believers. And even though it's one of the biggest songs in rock history, technically, it wasn't a hit. The band actually hated it. They hated it until it got mixed. Inspired by a literary classic that every generation has read, and even though it was a tall order to name the track after this all-time novel, it's a rare case where the song is better than the book and the movie. Find out next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. You know, if you love the music of the golden era, I consider it golden, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, you're going to get exclusive interviews and stories of the rock and roll era from the artists themselves. And make sure to click the bell so you never miss out on our daily content. Also, check us out on Patreon. You can be an honorary producer and help us keep the music alive. You can do that below. After discovering Rush from a rock radio station as a young kid, I was off to the races. The next Rush album I tried on for size after Permanent Waves was Moving Pictures. Today, we're going to break down that period with a focus on the album and its most iconic track, Tom Sawyer.
Tom Sawyer, he gets high on you, and the space he invades, he gets by on you.
Moving Pictures is, of course, Rush's 8th studio album, released on February 12, 1981. After touring to support Permanent Waves, the band began writing and recording new material in August 1980 with the help of co-producer Terry Brown. Moving Pictures was a massive step forward into mainstream consciousness. These songs were more radio-friendly than those on previous albums. Having already started on this road with their previous release, Rush featured tighter song structures and shorter lengths. Rush had famously produced a consistent barrage of sizable tracks, sometimes reaching 18, even 20 minutes in length throughout the 70s. Rush's albums typically averaged between 6 to 9 minutes per track. Conversely, Moving Pictures averaged just over 5.5 minutes a track. That's not a hefty decrease, but it was enough to make their music more digestible for the uninitiated, if you will. The album's longest track, The Camera Eye, that clocked in 10 minutes and 58 seconds. Red Barchetta came in at 6 minutes and 10 seconds. But the remainder of the songs were all south of 5 minutes. So depending on how many Rush concert ticket stubs that you had accumulated up to that point, this transition into semi-mainstream could be viewed as a welcome step into the limelight or the loss of all vital signs. Sorry. Couldn't resist. Look, throughout the 70s, Rush proudly flew under the radar. They were anti-corporate, anti-establishment for the most part, and unconcerned with mainstream approval. They made the music that they wanted to make, and they couldn't care less about writing hit singles at that point. For years, these attitudes coalesced to define Rush's identity, and that of their fan base as well. Early Rush adopters were drawn to the music not only because it was phenomenal, but also because of the band's independent flair. And until oft repeated throughout music history, these early devotees weren't thrilled about opening the doors of their secret clubhouse to the masses. Believe me, I understand that. That's how I felt about quite a few bands.
It's Friday, I'm in love.
But it's not like Rush all of a sudden jettisoned their ideals with the advent of Moving Pictures. It is clear, however, that they were looking to evolve. They recognized that a shift was occurring in the musical ethos. New wave and synthesized technology, were coming on strong. MTV was about to flip pop culture on its head altogether. The 80s marked the beginning of new horizons, and Rush had no qualms with marching ahead to see what the future held and what it looked like. They wanted to push their own boundaries, just as any serious musicians would. Of moving pictures, Geddy Lee actually said, in terms of its effect on our career, I think it really gave us a kind of acceptance and a credibility that none of our records previously had done. I think it opened up the way for us to be accepted more readily on radio. I don't know, there's just sort of a permanence and legitimacy that came along with the success of that album. End of quote. Of course, in talking about moving pictures, I have to give a shout out to the album cover. Geddy said it symbolized the concept of the album, meaning that all the songs are like little films. The cover punctuates this idea by employing a thoughtful visual pun with a multitude of layers. First, there are workers who are physically moving pictures. As you look at the subject of those pictures, you become aware that they are, in one way or another, emotionally moving. Next, there are the onlookers who are visibly moved by those moving pictures. And finally, if you dig a little deeper, you will spy a film crew filming of this whole episode, turning the incident into a different sort of moving picture. So in summary, there is a crew of movers moving a series of moving pictures being looked upon by a moved audience who, in conjunction with the moving picture movers, are being made into moving pictures by a film crew. Did you get all that? If by chance you happen to be moved by this album, well, then you have just elevated this scenario into the next level of meta. I'm going to have to stop here since going any further is going to make my head explode. Anyway, let's talk about moving pictures. Its most iconic track, Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer was conceived during a summer rehearsal vacation that Rush spent at a farm outside of Toronto. Per usual, the lyrics were written by par excellence drummer Neil Peart. Peart had been bestowed this honor from his earliest days with the band. When Geddy and Alex realized that he was by far the most well-read member of Rush, one of the most well-read in all of music. But actually, in the case of Tom Sawyer, Neil Peart collaborated with another songwriter partner as well, Pi Dubois, a Canadian poet and master wordsmith from the band Max Webster. It's actually the first time working together on a project. Remembering how Tom Sawyer was conceived, Neil Peart said, Pi's method is that he just kind of sends me pages of scribbles and I impose order on them. So it's a perfect meeting of personalities in that he dwells in an imagistic universe and an impressionistic universe and expresses it as such, whereas I live in a much more ordered universe and impose that structure and rhythm and parallel construction on it. End of quote. When they wrote songs together, that's how they did it. Pi the poet would string together ideas, concepts, intentionally leaving them flexible and interchangeable. And then, as if possessing an almighty hammer and anvil, Peart would forge the words into a lyrical masterwork. Process was a melding of minds between two songwriting masters. For Tom Sawyer, Pi presented Peart with a poem that he had entitled Louis the Lawyer, or if you're from the Canadian province, probably Louis the Lawyer. Anyway, now there's been some debate over this over the years. Some have claimed that the poem was actually called Louis the Warrior, but Pi has said on several occasions it was called Louis the Lawyer. I think people have come to that conclusion based on the final lyrics and Tom Sawyer using the word warrior. As I understand it, the poem in its original form was about 70 or 80 lines, but Pi narrowed it down to 25 or 30 for Peart to work with.
Monday warrior, mean stride. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean.
The subject of these poem fragments was about a modern-day rebellious spirit reminiscent of Tom Sawyer. As Pi remembers it, it was Lewis the lawyer when I gave those pages to Neil, and then it was Tom Sawyer all of a sudden. He didn't like Lewis the lawyer. It's completely different. Well, not completely. It was the same with respect to some of the lines I had written. I just grabbed lines from the original that I thought were nice. I don't remember putting them in any kind of order. After the collaboration between Neil and Pi produced a draft, Getty entered the picture from here. He and Liveson helped set the poem to music. Up to that point and beyond, part of Getty's job was to make sure that Neil Peart's lyrics were melodic. He did have to sing them after all. Getty said, "I have to feel comfortable with them, and if I don't sound comfortable, it's obvious." Breaking down his approach, he continued to explain, "You take two kinds of attitudes when you're a singer. The one is that you write the lyrics or you believe in the lyrics that have been written so strongly that you become the same statement. And then there's the other point of view where you look at yourself as an interpreter of someone else's thoughts, and very much like an actor who, to the best of the ability, is trying to convey the feelings that person had written." End of quote. That's a perfect way to say it. In Geddy Lee's case, both those approaches routinely come into play, but whether he approached Tom Sawyer with one or the other is pretty much a matter of conjecture, though Rush has given us hints over the years about songs' meaning. There's a lot that's left open to interpretation, as a lot of iconic writers say. They want you to take your own meaning from it. Geddy Lee himself has called the lyrics slightly inscrutable. I might also be inclined to add a few more descriptors like enigmatic, maybe ambiguous as well. Maybe the place to start is with the title, Tom Sawyer. For all those who slept through English class like I did sometimes, I'll give you a quick synopsis of the American literary classic that, of course, this song references. Tom Sawyer, he's the protagonist of Mark Twain's famous 1876 novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Tom is an orphan who grows up along the Mississippi River in the fictional town of St. Petersburg. He's a clever trickster. He has a penchant for adventure, for mischief, skipping school, hunting for buried treasure, spying on midnight grave robbers, that sort of thing. You might call him a free spirit. But Tom Sawyer is also a dreamer with grandiose visions. And he also has a heart of gold. Though his misdeeds are plentiful, they aren't malicious, really. And from time to time, he even plays the hero. He's really just pushing back against the status quo. I mean, by the end of the novel, Tom proves that he can make mature decisions and show empathy for those people around him. So how do we translate that to the song? A modern-day warrior, mean, mean stride. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean, mean pride.
Mean, mean stride. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean, mean pride.
Though his mind is not for rent, don't put him down as arrogant. His reserve, a quiet defense, riding out the day's events, the river.
Riding out the day's events, the river.
What is readily discernible is that the lyrics paint a portrait of a modern-day rebel, free-spirited individualist moving through this world wide-eyed and intentional, really. For Geddy, the Tom Sawyer is about innocence more than anything. This is a message that he believes that people can easily identify with and appreciate. I mean, who doesn't yearn for yesterday? We do it every day. Innocence carries with it the idea that anything is possible, and that it is that's a really appealing reality. The grown-up in each of us, must contend with our own cynicism and our own track record for disappointment, failure. I mean, if we're not really careful, innocence, it's easily replaced with baggage, wounds, bitterness, even heartache. Even if we're vigilant, losing our innocence may be an inevitable rite of passage as we grow up. I don't believe that. We got to keep it. Anyway, Peart believes that this balance between innocence and maturity is a key theme within the song. He said that the reconciliation between the boy and the man within him is a big part of what it's all about. How do we reconcile the innocence within us with what the world expects from us? How do you look to the future with hopeful dreams when we've lived long enough to have been scarred by the gritty overbearance of conformity? How can you live in this world and not buy into the system? I'm not sure that Tom Sawyer necessarily answers all those questions for us, but we get as much as always hopeful yet discontent. He knows changes aren't permanent.
Always hopeful yet discontent. Those changes aren't permanent.
And though it's a good mission statement, we're not exactly told how to do it. But maybe that's the point. I think it is. Maybe the message is that we should think for ourselves, not even relying on the holy trinity of Rush to tell us how to do it, but to find our own solution, our own interpretation, our own mantra. No, his mind is not for rent to any god or government.
No, his mind is not for rent to any god or government.
I mean, just poetry. Rush Peart is amazing. This lyric, it really speaks to our current situation, does it not? We need more Tom Sawyers right now. The members of Rush have shared their feelings on this rock standard. Tom Sawyer is really a trademark song for us, said Alex Lifeson. Musically, it's very powerful. Lyrically, has a spirit that resonates with a lot of people. It's kind of an anthem. Again, Alex Lifeson feels that way. As triumphant as this song has become in our modern culture, Geddy Lee remembers being disappointed when they finished recording it in the studio. He said that the band hated it because they felt like they didn't capture the spirit of the song. For them, it was the worst song on the record. The fact that it's so popular still just confuses the hell out of me, is what Geddy said. However, he did acknowledge that it all came together when they were mixing it. He said, sometimes you don't have the objectivity to know when you're doing your best work, end of quote. I guess sometimes even the greatest musicians can be surprised and just as blown away by their work as we are. Back in the day, Tom Sawyer went to number 44 on the U.S. Billboard chart and to number 8 on the U.S. mainstream rock chart. Also peaked at number 24 in Canada. That all began in the summer of '81. The studio version of Tom Sawyer, despite its popularity, was not widely released outside of North America. In the UK, Vital Signs was chosen as a single instead. Tom Sawyer is way bigger than this chart position. It's one of the most played songs on classic rock radio, for sure. It's actually one of 5 Rush songs that was inducted into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2010. But charts, lists, and numbers are only the tip of the iceberg. So many years later, Rush and Tom Sawyer are still so relevant. Browsing through YouTube, you could lose yourself for weeks in the sheer amount of content, covers, mountains of performances, references, commentaries, tributes, covers, gags. The music video for Tom Sawyer alone has amassed 54 million views. Look at Spotify. It's got an additional 200 million plays there. Tom Sawyer, it's dominated pop culture over the years. It's been, it's made many appearances in several movies, TV shows. The Waterboy in 1998. There's Freaks and Geeks in 2000.
With that drummer you're listening to? Yeah. He's terrible.
Futurama. Family Guy, The Sopranos.
Cooler than that cheetah from the commercials.
Chuck, Fanboys, Fringe. The Goldbergs in 2016 and just using City on the Hill.
In my van, it's Rush. All Rush, all the time.
What about the Foo Fighters cover? In 2015, they covered it at a concert in Alberta.
Tried today's Tom Sawyer, mean pride.
Imagine Dragons just covered it. You can also find Tom Sawyer in the video game Rock Band, of course. And if all virtual content isn't enough, you might consider attending RushCon. Yeah, RushCon. I've had enough of Comic-Con. I need RushCon. So do you. Tom Sawyer is the song that seems to be the opening shot, for most young people who don't know the band's music. It's actually the first Rush song that I showed to my kids because I knew that it would be the best way for them to enter into the Rush dimension, if you will. It's got that elevating and addictive opening, like I said, that just gets under your skin and into your soul. Then you hear Geddy give one of his signature vocals.
Warrior, mean stride. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean pride.
I mean, I know it's Rush's most overplayed song, but to me it's still magical. I mean, even 1,000 listens later, because between Geddy, Alex, and Neil, you have a balanced elegance of sound and vision. I mean, Mark Twain, he would have been blown away, no doubt. It's one of those times where the song is actually better than the book. Leave us a comment about Rush and this heroic rock standard. What are your memories of this song? First time you heard it, let us know in the comments below. If you enjoy our content, make sure that you subscribe below, hit the bell so you never miss out on our videos. We'd love to have you as part of our community. We'd love to have you on Patreon as well. You can be an honorary producer, get more content there. And take a look at our merch below. 3 Chords and the Truth, it's all there. Until next time, 3 Chords and the Truth, my friends. See you soon.